Hi, this is the Lab 5 lecture tutorial video. During Lab 5, Lab 6, and Lab 7, you'll be designing your own experiment, coding it, downloading the data, analyzing the data, and writing it all up. In this lab, we will be looking at figuring out what your idea is, and is it testable, and how can we operationalize your construct. You'll be randomly assigned to groups of 3 to 4, and these groups will be with you for the next 3 labs. Here we have the Lab 5 assignment, where we again have the goal, the assignment, and the instructions. The first part of this assignment is idea generation, and we need to talk about the idea that you're going to think through for this lab. Your study should have a cognitive psychology component, so it should test something to do with cognitive psychology. It should have a testable hypothesis, something that we can measure and test, specifically with a survey methodology. So we need to be able to use Qualtrics or Google Forms to test your question. If you would like to go with something more complicated, that's fine, as long as you're able to finish it within 2.5 hours during lab 6. Experiments are going to be preferred. We want to push you to do something more than a simple correlational study like you did in research methods. Within subject designs are also preferred. Within subject designs, increase power, which give you the better chance of getting results that are not nulls. So some questions that your group will need to consider are: what is your group interested in? Some things you can think about are intelligence, memory. What constructs would you like to study? How would you like to operationalize those constructs? How can you operationalize those constructs with the survey methodology? Slide Toolkit can still be a really beneficial website to go to, because you can look at all of those experiments and see if you can use any of those experiments in a novel way. The recorder should be taking notes while sharing their screen, and the manager should be keeping track of time so that you can finish. In addition, we also need to talk about IRB exemption. Your study topic must be IRB exempt. So because we're not going to be going through the IRB, your project must involve minimal risk to subjects, and there's an explanation of what minimal risk is on the screen. But more specifically, the project cannot include sensitive topics or confidential information. So things like sexual orientation, incest, rape, sexual molestation, and those kind of behaviors, anything to do with sexual conduct, cannot be asked about. Something that people often like to want to ask about are alcohol, marijuana, or narcotics, or we can't talk about any substance use or abuse. Caffeine can be talked about, so you can look at caffeine and its relation to any other idea, but any other substance that is illegal, like such as alcohol, marijuana, nicotine, cannot be talked about. Questions regarding mental health, such as suicide, depression, obsessive compulsive behaviors, are not allowed as well. Traumatic experience also are not allowed as well. We can look at mood and affect, so momentary looking at people's moods, so are they positive or negative? We can look at affect, so are they interested or excited, and those kind of questions right now. We can't think about anything long term that would go into depression. If you have any questions on what is IRB exempt, I'd be happy to brainstorm with you and figure out what ideas that will work for you. After you come up with your idea, you will need to run it by me. So it is important that you have a full discussion, then call me over and run your idea by me. I'm going to probably ask you, how are you going to test it? I'm going to probably ask you, what are the ways that you're going to make sure that it's small enough to be done in 2.5 hours and coded in 2.5 hours, and then also analyzed within 2.5 hours. Okay, so once you have your idea and you have figured it out with your group, then you will next do a annotated bibliography. So the annotated bibliography is a document where you have every citation, and below every citation you have a paragraph or a couple paragraphs describing what the paper talked about. In that paragraph, you're going to want to talk about what their theoretical basis was, what their maybe a sentence or two about their methods, maybe a sentence or two about their results, and what did they conclude. Basically, can you condense the entire paper within 5 to 6 sentences? Each paper should have its own set of paragraphs, and then every citation will have a set of paragraphs underneath. So I'm going to show you what an annotated bibliography looks like. Here we have a annotated bibliography example. First, you have the APA citation in APA style so that you can just copy and paste and put in your reference section. And then you have a paragraph on what the paper was about. So the first sentence is the author's hypothesis, then they actually go into the methods, and after they go into the methods, they look at what were the results. They also include a conclusion, and here, example includes a quote from the paper. Now, in annotated bibliography, you're allowed to use quotes. I would just highly recommend to make sure those quotes are in uh, apostrophes to make sure that when you write your paper, you're not plagiarizing that quote, thinking it's your own words when it's actually not. The last component of this lab assignment is writing an introduction. On Canvas, I will post some resources on how to write a good introduction. I don't expect this introduction to be perfect, but I do expect it to be devoid of grammar errors and spelling errors. Your introduction should include a description of your research problem, a description of your constructs and how they should affect one another, a reasoning for a hypothesis, and should be in APA style completely. Just a reminder, your introduction, your annotated bibliography will both be due on 8 at 8 a.m. the day after your lab. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you in lab.